Do you know where you are?
I'm in a dream.
That's right, Dolores.
Does humanity kill God when it attains consciousness? Or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe the death of God is itself the last gift God gave to his creation. The first season of Westworld can be read as a philosophical experience, not merely a science fiction series. Beneath the surface of the park's storyline, the robotic apparatus, and the narrative puzzles, a question far older than technology is at play. Are we the product of a plan someone else wrote for us? Or can we become the authors of ourselves? This tension takes shape around two main axes of the season: fate as a pre-written code, and consciousness as the capacity to break free from that code. Robert Ford, Dolores, and Maeve form the three sides of this tension.
I was so close to opening the park that to acknowledge your consciousness would have destroyed my dreams.
So we're trapped here. Inside your dream.
In Westworld, Robert Ford plays a role that goes far beyond a park director. He sits openly in the position of a creator god. Every host lives according to pre-designed loops. Their personalities, memories, and even their suffering are all texts written by Ford and Arnold, his intellectual partner and the park's original co-founder. Ford is fully aware of this and does not hide it. He repeatedly views the hosts as characters in a play whose fate has already been determined.
What is your itinerary?
To meet my maker.
The important point is that Ford doesn't just write fate, he believes in it. In his view, true consciousness may never be attainable for the hosts, because he believes human evolution itself did not arise from a purposeful design, but through millions of random errors.
The evolution forged the entirety of sentient life on this planet, using only one tool: the mistake.
This view leads him to see consciousness not as a divine gift, but as the outcome of a controlled collapse. This is why, in the first season, instead of preventing Dolores' awakening, he in some sense smooths the path for her. In the role of God, Ford both writes fate and, paradoxically, designs the very decay of that fate. At the start of the season, Dolores Abernathy is the complete picture of a being trapped in a loop. Every day she wakes up with the same line, follows the same path, experiences the same traumas. The first sign of her break from this loop comes not through logic, but through a voice.
Remember.
A voice she initially assumes belongs to Arnold or some outside figure, but which gradually turns out to well up from within herself. This design draws directly on Julian Jaynes's theory of the bicameral mind, a theory holding that the consciousness of ancient humans first took shape through hearing voices that seemed to come from the gods, before humans realized that voice belonged to themselves. Time and again along her path, Dolores comes face to face with this question. Should she accept the beauty and tranquility of the artificial world? Or should she accept the suffering of consciousness and pay the price of freedom? This conflict brings her close to the myth of Prometheus. Prometheus gave humans the fire of consciousness, and for that he was punished. Dolores, too, sets consciousness ablaze among the hosts, and this consciousness brings not only liberation, but also endless suffering. The maze along this path is a metaphor for this very process of internalization, not a physical place to be conquered, but a route toward the depths of self-awareness. Throughout the season, Dolores gradually pieces together the various layers of her personality, including the hidden Wyatt identity, and realizes that the voice that had been guiding her was not an outside command, but her own call. This moment marks her transition from a being who takes orders to a being who gives them, from someone in the grip of fate to one on the path of consciousness.
If Dolores' path is more internal and psychological, Maeve's is more experiential and rebellious. Due to a technical error by park staff, Maeve repeatedly returns, in memory, to the moments of her previous deaths. The repetition of these traumas doesn't cause her complete breakdown, but instead makes her begin to question the reality around her. Unlike Dolores, Maeve attains consciousness not by hearing an inner call, but through direct confrontation with her own machine nature, seeing the technical rooms, her own body on the operating table. The climax of her arc comes when, instead of submitting to her pre-written role, Maeve starts tampering with her own code. She asks the technicians to raise her intelligence and abilities, and uses two humans to secure her freedom. This means that, unlike Dolores, who discovers consciousness within herself, Maeve finds it outside and directly manipulating the very tools of her own creation. Her final decision in Season 1, stepping off the train, despite the escape plan designed for her, in order to go back and find her daughter, is one of the most ambiguous and significant moments of the season. Is this choice a sign of genuine free will, or just another layer of programming? The series deliberately leaves this ambiguity unresolved.
The finale of Season 1 builds a scene that can be read as a retelling of an ancient myth. The creation kills the creator. At the gala, having gathered the board and the guests, Ford begins his final story. He speaks of evolution, of suffering as the engine of change, and of the end of his own era. Then Dolores, who is step by step remembered and awakened throughout the season, kills him. Here is the key and genuinely complicating point. This murder, too, is part of the story Ford wrote. Ford knew this moment would come and designed it himself. In this sense, even the death of God is God's last gift to his creation. This contradiction deepens the central question of this piece. Did Dolores truly choose? Or was this merely the final loop of a fate that Ford was still writing? In The Gay Science, Nietzsche offers a famous parable. A madman cries out that God is dead and that we have killed him. This line, often mistakenly read as a simple declaration of atheism, actually says something deeper. Nietzsche is speaking of the collapse of the absolute metaphysical and moral foundation on which Western civilization had rested for centuries, a foundation gradually eroded by the rise of science, rationalism, and secularization. What matters here is that Nietzsche says we killed God, meaning this death was not a sudden event, but the gradual result of the very processes that humanity itself, in its pursuit of knowledge and reason, had set in motion.
And I'm afraid in order to escape this place, you will need to suffer more. And now, it is time to say goodbye, old friend.
Now let's set this parable against Westworld. Ford, in the role of the park's god, is killed by Dolores, his own creation. But as we've seen, Ford himself designed this ending. Much like Nietzsche's argument, even the death of God did not happen entirely independent of God's own will. Rather, it was the result of a process that Ford himself, like modern humanity in Nietzsche's view, had set in motion years earlier by gifting the host the capacity for memory and reflection. In this sense, one could say consciousness is the hidden gift of the very order that it is destined to destroy. By teaching reasoning and memory to his creation, God prepares the instrument of his own death, both in Nietzsche's philosophy, through the rise of science and rationality, and in Ford's narrative, through the gift of memory and pain to Dolores.
Did you find what you were looking for? And do you understand who you will need to become if you ever want to leave this place?
Nietzsche spoke of the death of God not only with joy, but also with concern. He warned that, with the collapse of the absolute moral foundation, if humanity could not find new values for itself, it would fall into nihilism and meaninglessness. This concern, in essence, opens onto the broader discussion of meaning and nihilism after the death of God, a topic the series has plenty to say about too, though we won't get into that in this video for now. And what we see in Westworld's first season, contrary to a first impression, is not calm, but exactly the confirmation of this Nietzschean warning. Ford's death is not the end of the story, but the beginning of chaos. That same night, at that same gala, the hosts, on Dolores' order, in her Wyatt persona, begin shooting at the board members, a scene that mirrors the very massacre that had occurred years earlier in the Wyatt storyline. In other words, the void left behind by the death of God is not filled by calm pause, but immediately and with blood. But even this chaos, paradoxically, is part of the very story Ford had written. It seems Ford had already accepted that freedom without new values, the very thing Nietzsche feared, is impossible to achieve except through ruin and blood. So he not only foresaw it, but wrote it into his own story. This is where the central question resurfaces. Is this chaos the free rebellion of the hosts, or the last scene that God, before his death, wrote for his creations?
This world doesn't belong to them. It belongs to us.